How much money do I need to retire? How much money do you need to retire? Here's the answer. As much as you can make, okay? And I'm gonna tell you why. Here is the thing that you need to understand. I can't give you a number because if you're not retiring for 30 years, I don't know what to tell you, all right? Because here's the thing. In 30 years ago, they told you you needed like $700,000 to retire comfortably. If you were 25 years old or 35 years old in the year 1995, and you thought you needed $700,000 to retire, 30 years later, it'd be next year, you're not retiring. So that's why you have to, even if you base it off of a 3% increase on inflation every year, it's really tough. How much do you need to retire? I don't know. It depends on when you retire. Now, there are ways I can help you get there better. The HSA, like I said, one of the most important things that people don't know about, that is the bridge between them actually retiring because or having to work until they get their Medicare and Medicaid because they can't afford to get off of their employer's health care plans, right? Can't do that, so they can't retire early, right? But here's the problem. Retirement equals fixed income. People on fixed income are the most at risk when it comes to any type of economic instability, right? Because the old 7% rule, which is a rule, is the average of the market is 7% per year. You keep in 3% worth for inflation because inflation goes up 3% per year, meaning you can withdraw 4% every year, and you will continue to have as much money as you did, right? Because you get to keep 4% of the 7% gain, the other 3% you keep in to account for inflation, and every year you withdraw 4%. Well, that's great. And if you had $1 million, that's $40,000 per year, which, by the way, is not that much damn money. Now, if this is a 401k, traditional 401k, you're also paying income tax on that as well, so it's less. But let's just, for the sake of argument, $40,000. Well, you can't live off of that, especially if you don't have a paid-off house. But here's the problem. What happens when you have a year like 2021 where inflation is 10%? Well, again, we've talked about this in the past. Inflation, when you hear 3% annualized inflation, people think it's 3% from 20 years ago. No, it's compounding. 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%. And if you've ever seen a compounding calculator, I want you to take 3% and compound that every single year for 20 years. That's not 60%. That's far higher. But here's the thing. Remember this little 7% rule? You're accounting for 3%. What happens if you have 1 year of 10%? And the next year was 5%. And then you go back to 3%. Within a couple years, that curve on inflation has gone up so much that you can't account for this anymore. So that's why it's hard to account for how much do you need for retirement. I don't know. This is why it's so important to pay down your house, right? Like if you're paying, like I tell you guys, pay extra, even if you decide I only want to pay off my mortgage every 2 weeks instead of monthly, right? You account for 2 extra weeks in a year. It helps bring the principal down. Throw some extra cash to the principal because you pay less interest. You own your house quicker. You have more wealth because you're paying less to bank the interest. You have your house paid off. So that way, when you do go into retirement, that's not something you have to worry about on fixed income, right? And it allows you to retire earlier because if you're on fixed income and you have a 10 to 15% year, you now don't have the money to pay for the house, or you've got to cut money, or you've got to withdraw more money from your investing account. Okay, so get your HSA going, get that house paid down. There's a lot of things you can do. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here, but when you say, how much do I need? If you are retiring right now today, and it depends on the type of retirement. Is this a fixed income retirement? Okay, now you have to account for that. What do you have paid off? If you still pay a mortgage when you retire and you're paying interest, that's a significant amount of income coming out that you wouldn't pay if you had the house paid off. Do you have another source of income? Do you have a pension? Do you have a Roth or a 401k? Do you have the HSA? Do you have to wait for Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security to kick in? Because technically, when Social Security kicks in, you get an extra, depending on where inflation is, if it keeps up with the thing, you should be kicking in another $20,000, $30,000 a year if Social Security is still around. But inflation, like I said, think about it like this. Compounding interest, right? You put your money in the S&P 500, you leave it there, 7% per year. It compounds, and all of a sudden, towards the end, it goes like this. Well, inflation can do the same thing. But if you have an extra blip here, it just kicks in faster. So you have to keep up with it. It's kind of like, I'll give you an example. Okay, I know I didn't answer your question because there's no real answer. I'm not a doom and gloom guy. How much you need for retirement? I don't know. Just stack as much as you can now. It's better to have more than not enough, right? Or, the other tips. Okay? But here's the thing. I know I'm going to get a lot of for this. I always do. But whenever I hear somebody say, we could fix the problems in America by taxing the rich more, and they end it there, I immediately stop paying attention to that person. And it's not because having more tax revenue wouldn't help. It would. If it actually went to where it was supposed to be and the value of money stayed where it was. See, here's the thing. The government loves it when you have class warfare. They love that. Middle class trying to stop poor people from taking what they have, poor people trying to be wanting what the middle class has, and then everybody getting what this class has. Let me tell you what we have. The U.S., and I'm just going to hit you guys with numbers, okay? This isn't like, should we or shouldn't we do something. I'm just saying I want you guys to understand the context. Does not have a taxation problem. The U.S. has a spending problem, okay? What do I mean by this? Have y'all ever seen what our already current tax revenue is compared to our GDP? You can either lower spending or increase revenue, pretty basic. And you already got the people coming out of the woodwork who don't understand that. You said lower spending or increase revenue. So you increase revenue, but you don't lower spending. Well, what is the government going to do? Continue to increase spending even more. And that just makes that a moot point. It's not or, it's and, okay? But let's get back to it. This is what I mean by it. Because you can increase revenue, but if the revenue isn't going to where it should go, it won't matter, right? So I'm not saying don't tax wealthy people more money. I mean, that's a different conversation. I just feel like if people use that as a solution, they don't understand economics, because I'm going to show you guys something here. Our GDP, okay? When you look at our GDP, our federal tax revenue is $4.6 trillion. $4.6 trillion. I want you to think about that for a second. $4.6 trillion. Our GDP is $27 trillion. Think about that. However, our debt to GDP is 135%, but revenue to GDP is at 30%. That's a really high amount. 30% of our revenue to GDP, 30%. But debt to GDP is 135% and increasing significantly faster. That means even if you upped our revenue by taxing everybody more money, right? Let's just say 50% revenue to GDP, which is insane to think about. No first world country should ever pay that much without having everything accounted for. It doesn't matter when your debt to GDP is 135% increasing. I mean, our interest payments alone on the debt is insane, right? And if you account for unfunded liabilities, don't even get me started. That's $211 trillion. Someone please think of the billionaires. Again, no one's saying don't raise taxes on these things, but then again, you don't even know how those taxes work. Let's raise the income tax on them. They don't have any income. Like, you don't even have a plan for that. But the idea is that guy, I'm so glad that people like, what was his name? Jay Rapid come in here. They hear you talk, they hit with facts, and they're like, oh, that fits with my argument. No, we got to save the billionaires. Nobody's saving any billionaires. I'm saying that you have been convinced that taxing billionaires will save and will fix all of this issue. It won't even come close. It won't even put a dent in it. Because if you just increase your spending, regardless of your revenue coming in, it does nothing. And the government is spending more money and raising it and printing more because that's all they have to do. And the more they print, the less the value of the money is. But the government loves it because what happens when you print more money? That money goes into a lot of different things that raises GDP or raises equity values. And it's the only way that you outpace the inflation. And that's why billionaires, right? Have you ever wondered, let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why in the last 10 years all the billionaires have almost 10x'd their net worth? Most people who don't understand economics will say because they're making record profits and stuff like that. Again, that's cute. Of course they're making record profits because the price of everything has gone up. Why has the price of everything gone up? Because the value of the dollar has gone down. Why has the value of the dollar gone down? Because we keep printing without any stopping. Nobody's stopping. We literally just got a budget yesterday or this weekend where they said we're suspending the debt limit in 2025. And so the way that the wealth keeps going up is because inflation. So that's why people in the government and the old boomers who vote these guys in don't vote anybody else in and stop the spending because, yeah, inflation sucks, but as long as you've got your money in a 401k, a pension, an IRA, and you're living off of those equities are outperforming inflation, so you don't care. But younger people are stuck footing the bill, or they've been convinced that they got to be away from this system and that they're just going to wait long enough until we take down the billionaires, and that's how we'll get our money and we'll be saved. It ain't happening. You're getting left behind. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't have higher taxes. It's not even raising the taxes, because then again, you want to talk about taxing billionaires? If you think income tax is going to do anything, you done f***ed up. They don't make an income. They pay themselves fucking $50,000 a year. Well, then we should tax their unrealized capital gains. Can't do that because then you're going to destroy everyone's 401k. I already told you guys. I'm not in politics, but if I wanted to get more revenue out of billionaires, see, that's the thing. Keep everybody misinformed and fighting amongst each other about the wrong things, and nothing ever gets done. There's two things, okay? You either get money from the corporations or for the shareholders. What do billionaires do when they need money? Right? They take loans out against their equities. Banks will be more than willing to hand them money because the equity value on a year-over-year basis goes up so much. They got collateral. So they just put up a loan. They pay the bank back the interest, and they don't pay any taxes on that, right? It's a loan, and never sell your shares. So the idea, if you really wanted to make billionaires pay their fair share, which is a stupid fucking statement. Anybody who says fair share is obviously never going to do anything about this problem. That's just a campaign tactic. If somebody says, we're going to make so-and-so pay their fair share, give me a fucking number. You can't? Oh, because you're pandering. Here's what you do. Every time a billionaire who puts up an asset as collateral and takes a loan against that asset without ever selling that asset, that's the loophole. That's how they get around it, right? Because you can't, if anybody who thinks Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk has $100 billion sitting in their fucking Chase account is an idiot, okay? They don't keep money there, okay? They don't do that. Their money is tied up in the value of a company, okay, that they started or they owned or that they helped build or whatever. And as that company becomes more valuable, their net worth becomes more valuable. But their only way they have net worth is if they sell those shares. And then they pay the taxes on it. So they're not going to sell the shares, because why would they pay 30% capital gains when they can get a 6%, 5%, 4% loan from a bank for the same? So what you do is you do one of two things. You either tax that loan directly at a certain level, or if you really want to get fancy, right, you take a percentage of the unrealized gains from where they got the shares to where they are now, and you use that as a baseline. That's where you're going to get your revenue. People think that billionaires are getting away with tax because of write-downs and write-offs and because they're doing all. That's not how they do it. You can't raise income tax on them because they don't have any income. Raising or charging non-realized capital gains will destroy so much of the value of the company, because then you're going to see a huge liquidation, or not huge, but a huge dilution of shares. If you want to get money from them, you got to tax it at any loans they take against that collateral. Is it really that simple? Well, if you want to get money from them, that's how. If you want to get money, because here's the thing: people who say let's raise the income tax on the 0.1%, fine, but you're not going to make any money because they don't pay themselves an income, right? So where do they get their money from? They don't sell their shares because they already pay taxes. They already pay their taxes on when they sell the shares. They just don't sell the shares. So the idea that we have to tax them higher to make up for all the shortfalls we have is a argument that is used to drum up that class warfare, because there's no real answer. It's just pay their fair share. That's a campaign word, right? Raise taxes on the 0.1%. Raise income tax. They don't have any income. So now these people get to run on a platform that sounds good to make you vote for them, but not actually have a plan or have anything to do, right? And I'm all for raising taxes on people who found the loophole, right? I don't get that fucking loophole. I mean, I guess I technically could, but I'd probably go to jail. The loopholes are where it's at. But even if you get through that loophole and you raise taxes and you get all that, it won't mean a damn thing until this is fixed. If you raise the taxes on billionaires by 50%, let's say you took unrealized capital gains. Let's say you took estate assets. Let's say you took collateralized loans. Let's say you took estate tax. Let's say you squeezed everything out, took 50% of their net worth, which you only get to milk that cow once. Let's say you do. It won't do a damn thing, because this will only continue to increase. And now you don't have a source of revenue to go back to. Yes, it sucks and it's bullshit that there are a very select few people in this world that own so much of the wealth. 100%. Right? Sure, a lot of them did something and built something, and they deserve, to have that wealth. It incentivizes competition and innovation, which then helps the entire population. People forget about that. But they're exploiting loopholes that they help fund the writing of, right? So there's some behind the scenes stuff going on there. And if you want to go after that, do it. But if you don't do this first, it won't matter. And accidentally, you'll do more damage in the long run than you thought you were doing good. That's all I wanted to get out of this. Absolutely. Let them pay more money. These loopholes that they use to not pay more were because they funded the people that made the loopholes, right? It's very simple. But if your first go-to answer about spending, debt, taxes, social programs in America, if your first go-to answer is tax the rich, you've already lost the argument. While that's a part of it, that's a secondary and tertiary. This means absolutely fucking nothing. Well, at least it's a start. No, it's not. You'll end up actually making the problem worse if you don't fix it from here. If you don't fix this first before doing this, you make this worse. Because you go after this, you milk a cow, but you over milk it and you don't have a chance to go back to it. Now you don't even have a fallback plan. And then this just gets even more out of hand because now you have no backup plan. If you want to tax the rich, I get it. 100%. Okay? First off, you have to fundamentally understand how you tax them and how their wealth is. So many younger people think they're just sitting on piles of cash. But if your answer to fixing the monetary budget, whatever you want to call it, spending, like, well, we could have free education in America if we just taxed the 1%. You could have that now without raising taxes on anybody because we're spending so much damn money. You could fund it tomorrow and it'd just be a normalized fucking budget year. Well, Stocky, that's because I believe my politicians. They'll raise the taxes on the rich and take that tax dollars immediately and put it directly towards exactly what I want it to go to, not a penny anywhere else, and we'll be funded. So why aren't they doing that now? We're at $34 trillion. We're bringing in $4 trillion. If you tax all of the goddamn 1%, 100% of their fucking income and capital gains that they have is that, let's say you get another 2 trillion out of it. Now you're at 6 trillion. You're still 28 trillion in the hole. Sorry, 29 trillion, 30 trillion, 31 trillion. Again, not defending billionaires. I'm all for it. And if you want to tax them, learn how the tax to work them. Just saying ambiguously, tax the wealthy, tax the rich. You sound like a damn idiot. You sound like a parrot. You sound like a parrot. Tax the rich, tax the rich. Okay, how? Raise their income tax to 70% like it was in the 50s and 60s. Okay, cool. In the 50s and 60s, they had an income. Oh, all of a sudden now you realize that they don't have income because they have all their stuff in assets, but that money's got to come from somewhere. That shit trickles down. Trickle-down economics don't work, but trickle-down tax does. This guy wants us to be a fucking accountants in order to say tax the rich. No, I just want you to be informed so you can sound smarter the next time you go in someone's chat instead of mine where you're just like, oh, this guy's defending billionaires. This guy says tax the rich, and he wants us to be accountants. You just made me feel so good. You just literally said, this guy wants me to be informed before I make an argument? No. I'm actually helping you out. I'm actually going to help you articulate your point to somebody on how you can tell somebody to tax the rich and do it in a way where somebody listens to you and doesn't think that you're just out there crying. I'm actually helping you out. I agree. Tax the rich. And next time you're in a conversation with somebody who doesn't want to tax the rich, you can say, well, actually, taxing the rich would actually help. It would help a lot because we wouldn't be taxing the income on their on them because they don't have an income. They actually have all their money tied up into assets within a company, which is basically as a shareholder. But you can't tax unrealized capital gains because then you'd cause a dilution in the market. But did you know that these guys actually take out collateralized loans that usually lower than what the federal interest rate is, and they avoid the taxes by that? I bet if we went after that, we could collect some money. See, I just made you sound better and taught you. Because see, you don't understand. I'm not biased here. I'm just giving you information. I'm trying to help you out. But see, you're so thick-skulled that you've been living in an echo chamber for so long that you're instead of saying, man, this guy's giving me some info that could really help me articulate my argument, you're like, bah! Oh, that made my nipples hard. That dude can't even read. I know. He'd be upset if he could read. But yeah, no, seriously, that's an understanding of where we're at and that the spending is going up at such a level that it won't matter. And the net worth of these people will just continue to go up because they're invested in equities that also go up because that money. I'll give you a last little bit. Here's a little, I'll give you a last little bit. You changed my mindset. I'm not here to change your mindset. I'm not here to change your mindset about raising taxes on multi-billionaires. No. I'm telling you how you would actually do that in a way that would work. But more importantly, that before you do that, you need to fix the overall problem because otherwise you actually exacerbate the problem. But here's another last little bit right here. This is stuff that might be fun for you guys to have in the future. Did you know, like a lot of people here when Eisenhower said, beware the military industrial complex, and they don't actually understand what that means. And a lot of people think that that means the U.S. is always at perpetual war, and that's how we make our money. We don't make our money that way. War is expensive. That's why proxy wars. That's what Eisenhower was worried about. Okay? Think about this for a second. When our government writes a check to another country in a conflict for aid, support, military aid, I'm sure a lot of y'all don't realize this. But did you know there's a stipulation on a lot of that aid that money has to be spent to buy military equipment from U.S. military companies? I disagree with you. In general, we need to tax the rich more. There's nothing wrong with that at all. The way you're coming at it isn't wrong, but it comes aggressive towards dumb young people like me. Oh, not you, buddy. Just that one guy in chat. So yeah, we write a check for $100 billion. and then tell them they must spend that money, instead of giving them military equipment, they must spend our taxpayer dollars via them to buy older equipment from defense companies in the United States, which then makes the equity go up in those companies, makes the shareholders rich, which a lot of the Congress people are shareholders of these defense companies. And then when the military budget comes out, which is separate, they increase the budget because they have to now produce new equipment to replace the old equipment that was just bought by a country that was given money to buy that from the U.S. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that. They think that military budget is military budget, defense, because once again, defense spending, military spending, two different things. Most people don't know that. Not to account for the 25% of spending that is done off the books. But even when you do, why do you think, okay, and this isn't conspiracy, I'm just telling you the stuff that, because now that we're on a roll. Why do you think that when the Congress just got together and had a new budget deal where they suspended the debt ceiling in 2025, allocated money for welfare programs, social welfare programs, and military spending, why do you think they said that they're going to separately do a Ukraine-Israel border and Taiwan bill? That wasn't added in the budget, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody reads this. Nobody pays attention. They're doing that separately. Wait a second, but Saki, isn't that military and defense budget spending? See, y'all thought I was talking earlier on the whiteboard. I'm defending capitalism and billionaires and stuff like that. Nah, you must be new to the channel. I'm here just to give you the facts and give you the numbers, man. I'm just here to give you the information. What you do with it, I don't give a shit. Right? Like, I want to see certain things happen in this world, but it ain't up to me. I want you guys to just know what's going on. Can you answer my last question? Which one? Wouldn't taxing the rich or getting extra money from them make them find alternative countries to set their funds and assets in and move their businesses so it ends up hurting your economy even more? To a small extent, yes, but that's a straw man argument that's used by the right. Well, I shouldn't say the right because that's just generalizing. By people that defend and lobbied by a lot of the corporations, because both sides are lobbied heavily by the corporations. And it's just a scare tactic that says, well, if you raise taxes too much here, they're going to move it offshore. They would have already fucking did that if it was beneficial to them. When China introduced capitalism to their economy on their port cities, and all of their population that was starving to death moved to the coastals, and then all of a sudden innovation happened, and the cities went up, and there was technology and all that stuff like that, and all of these U.S. companies already moved over there because it was beneficial. They moved. A lot of these companies are not sitting here in America saying, oh, well, if you raise this, we're moving our stuff overseas. We're moving our assets overseas. No. Everybody who's already doing that is already doing it. It's actually becoming more and more difficult after the Panama Papers came out, after the Cayman Islands started shoring up and stopping people from utilizing that. Shell companies getting exposed online and tax havens getting more Overwatch. We're seeing that it's actually happening less. But the idea, because here's the thing, Amazon pays almost 0% in tax, right? Because they just write shit down. They charge their subsidiaries offshore to feed or bring their taxable income down and whatnot. They already do that. You raise corporate income tax, unless you get rid of loopholes, it's not really going to change much. And if anything, it doesn't matter because they get subsidized whenever they build a plant somewhere. So the people end up paying for it anyways. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm just saying that like it's always a very more complicated subject. But you know, just taxing the rich. Because remember, tax the rich. That's just such an easy way. That is something that is implanted in you as an idea of this is an easy way of solving a complex problem. We're not going to give you a solution. We're going to give you a tagline. And it's going to sound good because, yes, they have way more than I do, so they should give up more of theirs, and that there's no argument there, right? And I'm not even arguing against it. Sure, I don't want to stifle innovation and competition and incentive, but at the same time, I'm not going to stop people from doing it. It's just that the reason that it's such a dumbed down line is because it's so easy to use that in propaganda and in elections and whatnot. It's, hey, there is an untapped source of revenue, even though taxes are basically fake. It's just a way of money supply. But it's an untapped resource. And we want to make you believe that we're going to tap that resource without doing it. And the best way to do that is to tell you what the solution is without explaining to you how we do that, right? Like saying, all right, my sink is clogged. Okay. Let's unclog it. You're damn right. Vote for me. We'll unclog that sink. Okay. That's all I need to hear. As long as I think you're going to unclog my sink, you're my guy. Unclog the sink 2024. But why is it clogged? Well, I don't know. Because something's stuck in the pipes and not letting it go down. Oh my God, this guy is one of us. Holy. He knows what the problem is and why the problem is there. And all we got to do is unclog the pipe. Sink is no longer stopped up. But then you're like, well, depends. Is the sink clogged and is the water not draining because there's something stuck in the pipe? Is it grease-based? Is it a backup in the septic tank? Is there a problem with the garbage disposal? Is it one of the pipes from the dishwasher? And the reason I say that is you get the next level and say, all right, listen here. I still ain't sure about this guy. He says he's gonna unclog the sink. And he says it's because there's something clogging the pipes. But I want to know how he's going to fix it. Drano. Son of a bitch, I'm in. But it might be roots in the damn, I'm just saying, like, there's just, it's more complex. Like, you got to start looking at where these are at. And that's all I was getting at, was like, no, of course I want to unclog the sink. I'm not against it. I just hate that unclog the sink is where we stop at. Like, that's an easy way of doing it. Like, that's all I was getting at. Son of a bitch. You can unclog my pipes anytime, Stocky. The fact that your clogs your pipe means I don't want to get anywhere near them, okay? Stocky really pissing off everybody on the internet today. I'm not pissing. That's not my intention. My intention is not to prove a point or to change your mind. I just want you to have the information. Sure, I have a very abrasive, sarcastic delivery, but that's just part of getting you riled up so that you're listening and paying attention. I want you to know this stuff because it's stuck in my fucking head, okay? I had to learn about this shit, and now I want you to suffer the same fate, or at least sound smarter. That's all. My job, my intention was not to convince you that we shouldn't tax rich or the super rich. Nay, I wanted you to understand what you're told versus how it could actually be done. Income tax won't do anything because they don't have an income. Unrealized capital gains tax will do more harm than good. But what is the loophole? Collateralized loans, collateralized private loans. That's where you get your money because that's the loophole they're exploiting. You just learned something. Also, spending, GDP, revenue to GDP, how much our debt is, where that money's going, how it's allocated, and how even if you tax them, it still won't do anything because you'll never get close to how much we're spending, and spending is exacerbating at a point where you can't even keep up with tax revenue anymore. So go after them, but do it once you get the spending under control. Then, not only do you have spending under control, now when you actually tax them more, that's actual revenue that goes back to paying down the debt and pays for social programs without devaluing your currency.